welcome back to the channel. So today I'm gonna show you how to install EVE-NG on VMware Workstation. It's not too complicated. I'm going to show you the best practices, how the EVE-NG team wants you to install in VMware. Many people have their own way of doing it, but I'm going to show you the way that the official EVE-NG Community Edition cookbook shows you how to install. So this is something you can always refer to in case you have any questions or wonder something. They have loads of documentation. If you don't know what EVE-NG is, it's an alternative to CML, Cisco Modeling Labs, or GNS3, Dynamips. But personally I prefer EVE-NG these days, much more than GNS3. You can run almost anything these days, really. I'll show you quickly here, you'll see, basically EVE-NG supports all Cisco devices, pretty much Juniper devices, switches, QFXs, SRXs. They support so many interesting things, even traffic generators, lots of Linux and Windows VMs, a Zscaler even. Yeah, I think you can't go wrong basically. It's awesome. You can easily create your own labs, save topologies, import labs from other people as long as you have the correct images, obviously. So the first step is to hit download and grab the community edition from one of these links. And then once you have the image, ISO file, then it's time to create the VM. Now we're going to create the VM according to the way the official documentation says, which is that we're not going to load the OS during creation. We're going to create the VM, optimize and edit some settings, then we're going to install the EVE-NG itself. Alright, so we start by clicking create new virtual machine, choosing custom, next. Then, like I said, we're not gonna install the OS now, we'll do it later. So we have to pick what OS is gonna be installed. It's a Linux based OS, so let's continue. And obviously the name should be something that fits the purpose. For example, EVE-NG. And then processors will leave default, RAM will leave default as well for now. We're gonna change it later. And as far as the network adapter, there are a couple different options here, obviously. You can choose bridged, host only, or NAT. For laptops in general, it's recommended to use NAT because that'll get you up and running quicker. If you have a more complex network setup with subnets, things like that, then you might want to use bridged instead. But for now, for the ease of the tutorial, let's stick to NAT. And here are the storage settings. We're gonna keep them at recommended defaults. We're gonna create a new disk for the VM. Of course, in some cases, if you are installing a new version of EVE-NG and you have an old disk that you want to import, where you have backups and stuff, you can do that. Alright, so the documentation recommends nothing less than 200 gigs. Now this is a dynamic disk, which means that it will grow as your VM grows. So technically you don't need to have 200 gigs free at the moment. Like for me, usually my images don't go above 20 gigs. But just to show you, you can allocate 200 gigs here, and it will only use it if the VM grows, right? Alright, so, and the best practice is to store the disk as a single file. However, if you allocate disk space as here, or allocate all disk space, then it will allocate 200 gigs, but that's not recommended and not necessary at all. Alright, now we have to name the disk itself. Usually it's good to have it the same name as the VM. Here are all the settings. Now let's finish this up. Here is the empty VM. If we would power it from here, then we would get an OS error because there is no OS on it yet, right? Now, if we edit the VM settings, you'll see here the memory, for example, is 4 gig. I'm gonna bump it up to about 12 gigs or so. Processors, this is correct for this machine. When the most important thing that you have to do really after creating the VM is to enable virtualization here. So VTX has to be enabled, otherwise nothing will really work inside your EVG instance. Sometimes you might still get a VTX error when you boot the VM that is not enabled. Then that's something you need to enable in your BIOS settings on your laptop or PC that you're running EVE on. And then let's go down to the hard drive. This is the settings that we did earlier. You see, the max size that I put was 200 gigs, but currently it's only 25 megs. So it's not even close, right? You see, so it'll grow as we add images and stuff like that. You'll see later. All right, and now here, this is where we have to pick the ISO file. So as you can see here, it says CD DVD. That's because back in the day when you had to install an operating system on a server, you know, these servers used to have CD or DVD drives that you loaded an actual physical disk onto with the ISO file. Nowadays it's all virtualized, right? So we just use ISO files like this, and now we'll do OK from here, and now we can boot it up. So basically what happens now is it will have the standard Linux bootloader where we'll accept to install EVE-NG Community Edition. It will eventually prompt us for the language, which will keep at English, and then the keyboard layout, which is US. Should have US anyway, that will make it easier to follow tutorials and input commands and stuff later. And then once you select language and keyboard, the VM will slowly boot. And once it boots the first time, you get to a login prompt, but you will not be able to log in yet. You'll get errored out. After a while, it will automatically do a second reboot. After this second reboot, you'll be able to log into the VM and start the setup process. I'll see you when we're there. Oh, by the way, here is the keyboard thing I talked about earlier. So, language, keyboard layout, then you have to confirm here that you want to continue installing, and I'll see you. Okay guys, so now we're finally back after the second reboot, automatic reboot thankfully. So now we're back at the login prompt, and it's time to log in. Default is root and the password is Eve. Now we're at the setup screen. I have to type the password again. Can use the short name and domain here. Usually we stick to the defaults here. And as far as the networking here, you can do DHCP or static. The way you select, switch between these options is the arrow keys and the space bar. For me, I'm gonna go with DHCP for this particular machine and this demonstration, but in many cases you would want to go with static as well. Alright, then we'll have to, you can do NTP, direct connections, fairly straightforward stuff. And here we go. So we have an IP there at the top, as you can see. Let's try to log in. And thankfully it works. Well, of course it works. So this is the GUI. The default here is admin and Eve. And once you log in, this is what you're greeted with. So from here you could start creating topologies, but of course before you do that, then you have to have images. If you want me to continue with this introduction to Eve, adding images, creating some basic labs and stuff, let me know. I hope you liked this video. Thank you for watching.